Okay.
British.
All right. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Just going back over what was done. I just want to do this conference call because Wednesday I won't be. I'll be out of town. But I found it very interesting what was done. You know, Morris asked me exactly what was done. Well, BET Awards, it's a pretty good award show to be honest. I don't even look at that. I don't have cable, so I don't even look at BET like that. I don't look at none of it. Even when I had cable, I didn't look at it because it was just, you know, the big coon show. But it was great. Jesse Williams got on. This is a guy from Grey's Anatomy. He's what we call classified as black. Black father, white, but wives. But he's classified as black. So he got up and he was like, basically, we've been branded. We've been, we follow brands and we've been branded this, and something about white oppression this, and I mean, he said some very poignant things. I can't remember everything that was said, but he said a lot of very things. He said on point things, and I'm giving him credit for what was said. And he was like, he had one point where he was like, we're waiting on the hereafter, and he shook his head a little bit. He was like, that's a hustle, and man, it's great because us as black people, what we tend to do a lot is we champion people who we feel are speaking for us. Doesn't matter what race they are, we kind of put people on our shoulders a lot. We're really,
right.
we're really susceptible to things like that, and I noticed that. So when you talk about this situation, it's always situations like this end up becoming a thing where the house becomes divided, meaning that you might be a person that might be with what was said, so you're like, oh man, he said some real stuff, and then since you're with it, somebody might be against it. They'll point out the fact that, well, number one, he's mulatto, and black people, for the most part, have been dealt a hard blow by mulatto people historically. You can't argue that. That's read out from all the way from Kemet to the Boule Society. And if people do know their history, they know about what the Boulets stood for and what they have done to black people. And they know what W.E.B. Du Bois was actually a mulatto. People make it seem like he was a Negro, he was black, he was dark. No, W.E.B. Du Bois was a mulatto, and he tore down Marcus Garvey. I'm just going back to this to give you a history of what mulattoes have done. You have a point where mulattoes, the main people who are responsible for selling us into slavery, for the most part, historically, were mulattoes, not those that are of a darker hue. It was those that were used against us by our slave masters, our enemy, the white man. Even when we go back to Haiti, you have those that were classified themselves as Creole. They would be classified today as mulatto. They would be what people call themselves biracial, this or that. They wouldn't be black at all. Matter of fact, they didn't want to be black. See, people like to make it seem like those that are of darker brown or brown skin are hating on light-skinned people, which is retarded. Because first of all, we have no reason to hate them. You know what I'm saying? Because first of all, historically, light-skinned blacks have always had a level above dark skin. People like to say now we're all in the same boat, we're all being oppressed, which is true. I understand that. But if you study history and you study slavery specifically, usually the mulatto black was the one that they used against us to oppress us. Mm-hmm. One of the main things that we don't do is we don't know what racial politics is. And the big thing that centered around racial politics is, what can I do that is, now when I say I'm talking about from the perspective of the white race, find ways to keep painting the black race. And what way can I do it? And one of the greatest things that they've learned how to do since the beginning of the Boule Society is you can get someone who is light, bright, damn near white to supervise the black race. And see, they've been doing that since the Boule Society. I keep quoting Boule because a lot of us have no idea what the Boule is or Sigma Pi Phi. Right. You understand? They were the ones that were making decisions on black lives that we didn't even know about for a long time. And you have a brother, you know, of what happened last night with Jesse Williams. Jesse Williams for a long time has been saying some real deep things about white supremacy and been fighting against white supremacy. He has a lot of things going on in terms of humanitarian work for black people. He has black organizations for young black men. You know, he's like, he made, I'm paraphrasing something he said last night in terms of protecting black women. I can't say the whole thing because I don't remember the whole thing. But I went on social media, and it was funny how so many black women were like, you know, that, you know, I want to marry Jesse Williams, and it was funny. I seen a lot of sisters say like these same brothers who are hating on Jesse Williams do nothing for black women. It was like, wow, how did you use Jesse Williams as a need to throw brown or dark black men under the bus?
Yeah.
That's like that says a lot about what's in your brain. And this is not, I'm not saying every black woman did this, but I'm just telling you what I saw. Me scrolling down Twitter and Facebook, seeing a lot of sisters like, yeah, because again, this is not a sex situation. This is not male or female. This is a black people situation. We have a really bad tendency to always put people on our shoulders. Even with the movie Django, when Quentin Tarantino made the movie Django, it was funny. I seen a lot of people that were like, you know, I love this movie Django, and, you know, Jamie Foxx used to kill white people, and, you know, he's blowing white people up and this and that. And I'm like, dude, if you study the movie, you see that basically he had a white supervisor. He was supervised by a white man, his name was Dr. King Schultz. He was being controlled and contained. He was the Negro that was being contained until, you know, Dr. King Schultz was killed. Then he's going out killing low-level white. And as you can tell, if you look at the movie, Quentin Tarantino created the effect that it was more cartoonish as opposed to being realistic. You know, when he was killing white people up, it wasn't a realistic situation. It was really kind of goofy. So when you watch the latter part of the movie, you can see that it wasn't it wasn't believable. It was like, wow. Like, it's like everything was just extra over the top blaxploitation type, so that if a white person's watching this movie, they can't really be affected by the situation. So again, jumping back to Jesse Williams, we have to understand that the mulatto has never really been our friend at all. And this goes all the way back in African history. The first main people, if you study African history to a T, between the time period of Kush going into the first dynasty, the main people we had to deal with was the mixed whites or blacks or mulattoes that was a product of raping of the Kushite women from the cave dwellers or the Neanderthals or the white men. And they were the first ones that were trying to come in. They ended up becoming classified as the Greeks, okay? And if you, again, fast forward, the reason why I keep going into Boule society is because the majority of the Boule society are mulatto blacks. This is the reason why also you have also that were known as the Brown Bag Society. You had the Blue Vein Society. And these are societies that had a leg up over dark-skinned black people, but at the same time, they could pass for black and they can come into black organizations. Even you had some that went into Marcus Garvey movement and found ways to destroy it, because we do whatever we can to connect ourselves and consolidate ourselves with anybody who we feel are going to help us out in our oppression, even if we have no idea who these people are. So the reality is that we're very naive, again, in terms of racial politics. Always think like this. You have an award show. that people will say, well, it's going on live. I'm like, you don't think that if they pre-planned every performance, then they pre-planned what he said. And he had time to think about what he said, and they knew what he was going to say. Even if they didn't know what he was going to say, the fact that he was saying it is enough for them. Because if this was Isaiah Washington saying this, because they both played on the same show, Isaiah Washington, our brother that was expelled from, if people remember, Grey's Anatomy for saying something about homosexuals or whatever, if he was saying the same thing, reality is we know that would not have had the same effect on black people, and they would have not allowed it to get that far, because it was a dark-skinned black man making that same statement. But because it was a mulatto making that statement, then it's like, oh, now we're going right back to the mulatto supervisor of the black race. It's funny how the mulatto at one point in history in the Haitian Revolution decide that they want to be Creole, because they didn't want to be classified as black. They didn't want to be slaves. So at some point, they wanted to be connected to white people. White people wouldn't accept them. Then you get a point in history where they did whatever they could to tear down Marcus Garvey's movement, which they did tear down the UNIA movement, and that's a reality. But then they get to a point where now, where they appear again as being supervisors over the black race or being spokesmen over the black race. And it's real funny. Again, we know this. If this all said have been things that we've been saying for years, because Jesse Williams said it, now all of a sudden we want to pay attention to what's been going on. All of a sudden now, oh man, hopefully white folks will pay attention to us and throw us a bone or something like that, which is what we're doing, which is really a bunch of game, because this is the same thing again that we've been saying for years, but because it's like you got a whole Hidden Color series about it. You got black leaders who are dark-skinned who have been saying it for years, but because Jesse Williams gets on BET, a Zionist-ran organization, a Zionist-ran channel, and says that, all of a sudden now we have to pay attention. Now whites will listen now because we got a mulatto speaking for us. And see, you're relegated to being negative because you speak out against the mulatto, who historically has really been against the black race and has set up the black race for failure for years. So exactly why should I trust this situation? Because he's saying it? Oh, because, well, it's in the mainstream, so it has to be something we should pay attention to, even though it's something that we've been saying for years? Mm-hmm. See, that's something we got to start paying attention to, because now all of a sudden it's like we get this idea, well, at least somebody's saying, no, it's not at least somebody saying it. We've already been saying it. So exactly where are you trying to go? Are you trying to go into the mainstream, or are you trying to really change things for the black race? At the end of the day, we have to start paying attention to things like this. It's crazy. We've dealt with the tragic mulatto problem for centuries, and again, if things would have to have been changed, let's just say again, I always use history to reality, because history is never dead. History is alive, because if it wasn't alive, we wouldn't be here now. You can go back to slavery right now. Again, this man could pass for either black or white. When I saw Jesse Williams, truthfully, I did not know what race he was. I was like, what is he exactly? And see, right. you have to look at these what I call fence-sitting, I guess you can call him a Negro, fence-sitting Negroes, because he's dark enough. So I mean, he has somewhat black features because of his black father. But again, I didn't know what he was. But now he speaks for black people, blue eyes and all. Okay. Even though we've been saying the same thing for years. And that's the thing that black people are asleep to, is that, again, we've been saying the same thing for years, but because a mulatto says it, he says it on their channel, it has to be true now. Now they'll pay attention to us. So at the end of the day, we always want this, it's always that scene of we win the Super Bowl, so we got to put this coach on our back. This is what we're trying to do for him now. It's the same exact thing. And until we begin to, you have to watch people who do that, because it's like, because again, and I'm taking you back to me watching the show. I was like, okay, he spit fire on it. He spit some hot fire. I'm like, okay, but we've been spitting that hot. It's like saying Gerald Massey spit hot fire. Gerald Massey wrote some books on African history, but you got both people of our descent, of African descent, of melanated descent, who've been saying the same thing for years, but because a white person says it or a mulatto says it, it has to be true. Now they'll pay attention to it because he said it. That right there, to me, well, black people should look at that as an insult. They should look at that situation as an insult, as opposed to looking at that as a need now that now it's like, now the Underground Railroad is now moving because he said something. It's back to, again, the bone has been fetched, and now we got to bite on it because we have nothing else to lean on. We got to stop waiting on bones to be fetched our way and realize that this individual is a fence sitter. Mulattoes are fence sitters because they can lean on any side or either way. This is just, I'm going to throw something very trivial, but it's a really good situation to really look at. Just think about this for a second about what mulattoes tend to do. And they do it still to this day. We just don't like paying attention to it. You got a sister, Mariah Carey, right? Everybody knows who Mariah Carey is. She at one point, if you look at her life, look at her career, I think she started back in 91 or so, and she's been going on for 25, 26 years now. When she first started out, she was with a man named Tony Mottola, who was like an executive at Sony. All right? If you look at her and what she classified, because you have racial classification. Race doesn't actually exist. That's reality. But you have racial classification or cultural classification. She didn't even have a cultural classification really at all when she first started. That's why if you look at her music, just pay attention to me and walk with me. Her music at that time was very much neutral race. She wasn't really leaning white and she wasn't really leaning black. She wasn't black culture, but she wasn't white culture. So she was kind of like in the middle. So she could go to anybody's award show and play the game. But the moment her and Tony Mottola had, dissolved, all of a sudden in 1997, she's doing songs on Bone Thugs and Harmony, and now she's sultry. So then you can see cultural identification. She's now in the black culture. But then all of a sudden, she dates black, she gets with Nick Cannon, she does a whole bid. All of a sudden, she ends the situation with Nick Cannon. Now she's back with a white man, and now all of a sudden, you see her fence sitting again, but you see her now leaning more towards the white side. As you can see, when an individual can lean at any given time, at any given moment, they're a very dangerous individual. The mulatto, as a lot of our people in the past have said, John Henry Clark has said it, Dr. Chancellor Williams has said this for years. Going all the way back in our history with them, they've been our first enemy. Before anything else, they've been our first enemy. Always realize everything you see on television, because television is the main tool of white supremacy. Everything you see on television is a form of a ploy. It's a form of a ploy, and it's created for people to see. Because, again, it's programming. You really think that they allowed this man to get up there and say what he said and not know what he was going to say? Did you really think that? Did you really think because I've seen comparisons to Tyler Perry saying, well, if Tyler Perry said, no, Tyler Perry is a whole different situation. Tyler Perry in his mind would never say anything like that in his life because he's too busy buck dancing for white folks to do anything or say anything that Jesse Williams even said. So that's why I said at least if Isaiah Washington would have said this, because at least Isaiah Washington is doing things for black people that I know about. If he would have said the same thing, it would not have made the same effect because, as you know, black people do not trust dark-skinned or brown-skinned people. They don't trust anything that looks like them. But because Jesse Williams is light, bright, damn near white, blue eyes, and has some form of melanated features, he's okay to listen to. That's still slavery. But if you point that out, you're a hater. But historically speaking, in slavery, we trusted the mulatto because we wanted to be in the house very bad. So when you had the slave master's children come out that house, and we saw a product of a raping of a slave woman, and we saw that, oh man, wow, they're in the house, they get these benefits, they get this, they get that, they don't get to do what we have to do, they have a leg up on us on a status level. We wanted to get as close to that as possible. And to this day, subconsciously, we still have certain slave characteristics. We want to be connected to white supremacy as long as possible, and however we can do it, we're going to do our best to do that. That's reality. But now it's switched up now where these same mulattoes who literally was foiling a lot of our movements to even go against slavery, now they're speaking for black people as if we weren't doing the same thing for years, as if Dr. Welsing wasn't saying the same thing, as if Dr. Nellie Bullitt wasn't saying the same thing. Everything that he said is not something that hasn't already been said, but because he's saying it and we look at that at that light skin and we see God in light skin, at that point we're like, wow, someone finally said what we should have already been saying. I'm looking around like, wow, we didn't already say these things? That we gotta start looking at these things and start looking at people who all of a sudden, especially someone like, if you look at the show and you see while he's talking, you got Deborah Lee on like further, at least 15 feet away from him, maybe 20 feet or whatever, just sitting here smiling and nodding. She's Boulay, and you're gonna sit up here and tell me that you really think that this shit was not pre-planned out? All this stuff is already set up. You understand? They can plan, and they continue to play the containment game on Black Lives, and they've been doing it for years. And so we have to get to a point where we'll see certain things, but we don't react to it like this. Because I'm seeing, like I said earlier, I'm seeing black women running around here talking about marry me, Jesse Williams. I'm like, oh my God, really? Okay. I was like, okay, whatever. Wasn't surprised by that because that's exactly, it would have been the same thing if all of a sudden Mariah Carey said the same thing and she's out there and, oh man, Mariah Carey is a humanitarian now and she speaks for black women, she speaks for black men and everything, and all of a sudden now she's a revolutionary, and it's like, really? I mean, you got that's the thing, is because of integration and because of slavery, we're very open and susceptible to anybody to come out of anywhere to speak for us, as opposed to just us speaking for ourselves and making our words count for our own people. We don't need Jesse Williams to be completely honest with you. He can come out and say what he want to say because he has the avenue to say it. He's smart. It's strategic. He knows how light-skinned he is. He knows he has light-skinned privilege. So at the end of the day, he's going to get the chance to say whatever he wants to say. They're not going to stop him. But again, if it was a dark-skinned black man, a brown-skinned black man, that would not have went on to know that. And even if it would have went on, our people would not have responded the same way. Subconsciously, we still have an infatuation with light-skinned people. And we pretend to say that we don't, but at the end of the day, we do. You understand? Again, always remember, historically, your biggest enemy, one of your biggest enemies, for at least 5,000 years has been the mulatto. And they have never stopped doing that. But they strategically upgraded and evolved into what they're doing right now, which is now we can speak for a whole race. That's already been saying the same thing for years, already been dying in the streets. Now all of a sudden, because quotes he says, or Mike Brown this happened, and Sandra Bland this happened, and Trayvon Martin this and all that, he can name the names that we were already naming. But because he's naming them, he's naming how they count. So that's I'm about to go into questions. If anyone would like to have any questions about it, I'm open for questioning. No problem. You just got to regulate them for a minute. But go ahead. I'm here.
Do you think this is what I often this is Kush. Do you I always think even when they do things like this and then you see the men on social media, I believe it's like it's them igniting it. Like when you see the black women saying, "Oh, I need a man like Jesse Williams," I believe that's them, and then all the black women then follow. I believe that's just them, starting the fire with those, strategically starting those things, and it just picks up from there. That's what I think happens. Like, just orchestrated.
Yeah, it is. Because people like to see things like that. They like to see this almost like an abandonment. It's like an abandonment, and it's like, wow, she prefers this over this. You're not doing this, so he's doing this. So see how lackluster you are compared to him. And that's crazy. It's like I could be saying the same thing at the top of my lung for 30 years, but one telecast on an award show that a lot of us really don't even pay attention to like that, all of a sudden, because now he said it. I mean, these are conscious people, though. This is what the funny thing was, that these weren't just like, and I hate to separate blacks from blacks, but it's like these were people that you wouldn't expect to be saying this. But now all of a sudden, it's like, now we got to talk about it because Jesse Williams said it. That's hypocritical. It's like, that's why I said Dr. Millie Fuller's been saying the same thing for 50 years, but now Jesse Williams said it. That equates to everything a 90-year-old man's been saying, or Dr. Welsing's been saying, or because he said it. And it's like, we don't look at it like a reflection of our past. This don't look like a reflection of our past and what we've been going through for years with situations like this. Because also the moment that you bring it up, you're a light-skinned black man hater or light-skinned hater, and you can't bring this up because then you're looking like a hater. It's like, it is what it is. And that's why I said I give him credit for what he said. I don't not give him credit for what he said, but it is what it is. And we have to stop. It's like blacks either want to fall for the okie doke, or we're that naive to racial politics that we don't see what's going on. That's a problem.
And that goes back, brother, to self-hate.
Yeah.
We still hate ourselves, and even black women, I hate to say it, they become enemy. Not all of them. They become, foot shuffling for the enemy. Whatever the enemy says is right. If we say something or try to get them to stand with us, we're a problem. It's like they got to the point where they start hating us now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not all, but some of them.
Yeah. No, not all. Not all. We know. I clearly know exactly what you're saying, but you know how a lot of our people, when they hear one thing, that what we'll do is we'll take words in your mouth, we'll add words that you didn't say, mix it up, and it's as if you said something totally different than what you said. I'm like, no, we're generalizing, but the generalizations are very much poignant and they're real because they go on. It's funny, like, if even to the extreme fact, the extreme form of Tim Wise and Jane Elliott. Tim Wise has been saying, he wrote books on racism. He talks about race. He goes against white people. Now all of a sudden, it's like, that's my thing I have a problem with Tim Wise. I don't know the man, but I have a problem with the concept of Tim Wise, that because he's saying it, now we have to pay attention because he's white and he's saying it. It's like with Jane Elliott. I look at Jane Elliott and I just get a laugh at the situation because it's funny, because it's how she manipulates white people psychologically, because she shows them exactly what they do to black people. But at the same time, it's like Dr. Welsing was doing the same thing for years. But because, Jane Elliott's, we got to add Jane Elliott to it. No, we don't need to add Jane Elliott or Tim Wise, okay? It's funny to look at what they're doing, because you got Tim Wise on the new documentary, Out of Darkness. And it's cool to have him on it. You can do what you want to do. It's your documentary. But at the same time, we have to get to a point, and it's something my father, Dr. York, said for years, is that we have to stop looking for black authorities. And, white authorities. We look with white authorities and light-skinned authorities. Because if you look, you study things that he was saying. Even recently, he was talking about most of our black leaders were light skinned; they weren't dark. Yeah. And that's why I kept naming the Boule Society. The Boule Society socially engineered a lot of our black leaders, and we think like, oh, they just popped up. They can't really. You can't really. They're not responsible for who they came through. I didn't say they were, but if you're not paying attention to what's been going on with black people and the Boule and how much control they have over our leadership and our minds, and who all of a sudden jumps up and now they're a voice for black people, then you're really not really paying attention to what's really going on, because you have to study that society, because you got to realize, again, like I said, Deborah, BET is crawling with Boule and Zionists. They all work together to literally undermine the mindset of black people, and have been doing it since the inception of BET. And all they did when Deborah Lee took over, literally Johnson just handed it over to her. It wasn't like, oh man, now it's in better hands. Like, no, she's on. And it's a subconscious thing as well, because we want to believe that when these things happen, when Jesse Williams says these things, that they will get better, and all of a sudden, no. Things don't get better until you create things for yourself, so you won't need the white supremacist system to thrive off of anymore. White supremacy is a mechanism that literally thrives based on black wealth and black empowerment, and also black work, your own work. If you were not working and if you were not giving it power, it would no longer exist. If you were creating more black and female relationships, it would not exist. If you were creating more black authorities for yourself instead of worrying about Tim Wise and Jane Elliott, not even thinking that these people may actually be agents that, because they're speaking for black people now or speaking against racism, that means they're okay. Not realizing that politics put together and putting everything into place, you got to realize that these people there's no one who's not socially engineered that you don't see on television. If they really thought that Jesse Williams was that much of a threat, he would not have said a word out of his mouth. You would never heard of him.
They would have heard the music playing to cut him off.
Exactly. They would have cut that quick. They would have cut that. They would have cut that quick. The fact that he was allowed to speak as long as he was to speak, that's the first thing I looked at. I was like, wow, he's talking for a long time. Again, if you would have had a rap artist, let's just say you had a random rap artist go up there, I'll just say a Busta Rhymes. If Busta Rhymes would have got an award or a Lifetime Achievement Award or something, and just went off and said the same exact thing he was saying, they would have found the way to do a 5-second delay, cut him off. Come on, man. Always look at these are situations that are strategies of war, as opposed to saying, wow, someone's now speaking for us and we're not. We're going right back into a very gullible mind state.
Or they would allow him to say what he wanted to say, and then 5 years later they'd have killed him.
Yeah, exactly. He wouldn't have lasted that long.
Yeah, just like they did Prince. I mean, I tell people they murdered him. Yeah, because he was speaking out.
Exactly.
What's your thoughts on Farrakhan? Because Farrakhan seems to be he gets that time. He gets he's been on the Breakfast Club. He gets a lot of airtime.
Yeah, he does.
And, so I'm always I just remember what your father said back in the days. So I'm always just wary of him.
Yeah, it was something that my father said years ago about Farrakhan being working for the CIA. He was compromised late 80s, early 90s. So a lot of what you see, even with the Breakfast Club, and he was on there twice, and he's all buddy with them and everything. That stuff is done because they trust Farrakhan. Farrakhan works for them and been working for them for years. So it's no surprise when I see him and he's shaking hands with Jesse Williams and he's on the Breakfast Club. He's doing this. We need to do this, and so now he's the black leader that they've approved for us. It's like you have to have that stamp of Negro approval in order to really be a black leader, because as you can see, whatever black leader that still exists is there because they wanted to. And we got to look at it. Even with the whole, I always go back to whether it be my father or Steve Coakley. Steve Coakley died of a very slow poison death. And we never look at that. We always think like, you know, he was just saying stuff. And then if you go back to his old lectures, he was going in on everybody. He would expose everybody. He connected the dots to the point that the same way he did it is a lot of our people now that are fearful of the way he did it. So as you can see, he doesn't exist anymore. And he didn't fly under the radar. They knew exactly who he was. At one point, O.J. Simpson was cool with him. So they knew exactly who Steve Coakley was. They found the way to get rid of him. So anybody that they want to exist, they socially engineer to be that spokesman for black people. So Farrakhan, to me, was like, okay, because side note, I went to the Million Man March and everything, but it really was about working with blacks that I felt was trying to do whatever we can for our own. But as you can see, it was like when he got up there and he spoke, it was the same orchestrated rehearsal that he always does. So it wasn't like, okay, it wasn't almost like a red alert statement. He never made red alert button statements like, okay, it's time, okay, we gonna do this, or we're gonna separate from white people. He never made like that statement. It was he quoted the Quran, he quoted the Bible. So he, in a way, was able to let white people, he basically got white people to be satisfied with what he was saying and got black people to become more and more sedated again. You know, and we don't see it from that angle because we would never in our minds think that a black person would turn their backs on our own, but not really studying our history. We don't even pay attention to that. That's been going on to us for years because slavery created certain mechanisms in our mind of fear. So we'll do whatever we can to either not be killed or do whatever we can to be against white people. And even if it means destroying a black movement, some form of progressive black movement will do that. So yeah, that's my take on Farrakhan.
Yeah. So I noticed that over the years he changed his message, the way and the tone of his message. Still the same, but it's still the message changed.
Yeah. He's no longer consistent. It's not a consistency with what he was saying. It's like Dr. Khalid. Dr. Khalid was very consistent with everything that he said. He never stopped saying the white man was the devil. He said it till he was killed himself. And Farrakhan stopped saying it. At one point, as you could say, he was saying, even, matter of fact, I looked at a documentary on Muhammad Ali, and this was it was Saturday, and I looked at it, and he was like, they made the comparison when Muhammad Ali decided to go with War Muhammad after, Farrakhan took over Nation of Islam in the late 70s and whatnot, and they stopped saying the white man was the enemy and the devil. And Farrakhan in an interview said, well, he's evolving, brother. So I'm saying, oh, okay. So is that what you were doing when you stopped being consistent and you stopped being you call it evolving? Okay. And that's stuff you got. The fact that your message changes, and come on, man. These are the type of things that we have to look at. So this is the reason why I did this class, was to really get people to just start looking at things differently. I don't really comment too much on anything anymore as much. I just use this as the avenue to speak. Again, I don't trust the situation at all myself. I give him credit for what he said, but at the end of the day, we don't need mulatto or white for us. We can speak for ourselves. We've been speaking before they existed, but we have to get our own people to be able to see and debrief from always trusting light skin, mulatto, white skin, all that stuff, because that shit is not God. This shit is the fucking devil, and we don't know how to differentiate because we're so deeply rooted in the spell that we can't, especially when you get, as the brother Kush was like, wow, these women all of a sudden, it's crazy. He made a good point. A lot of that, when you go on social media, a lot of that is set up like that. When you see all of a sudden sisters, and then that becomes the perception that dark-skinned men or brown-skinned men are still inferior to their light-skinned or mulatto counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know how to look at that and see that that's still racial politics still being played right in our face. Even his statement is a racial politic being played in our face because, again, we know what we would never be allowed to say on a world stage like that, but we know they'll always have someone like him, a mulatto like him, to speak for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take, I didn't want to have a long class, but I'll take a couple more questions in case anybody had any more.
Yeah. Well, brother, well, what do we do as far as, who do we listen to? You know that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing made her transition, and I still listen to Dr. Umar, and I know Brother Dick Gregory is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to tune in. And what do you think? What do you say about our conscious community? Even some of our new Wapians are going off base and going on this tangent about even foot shuffling with the enemy, because I remember one conversation we were having about a sister marrying a white man. And then one sister got up and just started saying she can marry who she wants to. It don't matter what color. She's supposed to be a Nuwaubian name. And I looked at her like, really?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that. That was kind of funny. You just got to it's funny how my father would test the spirit, but he used it in that time when we was Holy See Baptist Synagogue. But I learned that over the years you got to take an element from each school of thought that we were in, and that statement is something that we got to do now. You got to test the spirit and watch the works of the person, because each time you see something that just don't add up, you got to take a step back. That's it. First thing, that's what I do. I just look at the patterns of the individual, and I say, okay, if this person's, at least it's funny. I don't listen to Dick Gregory like that, but at least Dick Gregory is consistent in whoever he is. He's been consistent at whoever he is since he's been doing comedy. So he's consistent. The thing is, look for consistency in a person. Whoever is consistent at having some form of integrity in our people, that's who I listen to. I don't just immediately dump them, but if they start having real funny character issues, I back away. The sister that was, when I saw that, it was kind of odd because I was surprised because I know her and I did a conference call with her, so I was kind of surprised that she went there. But you can say what you want to say. Just realize that we're not gonna let you get away with it. You can say what you want to. Just know we're not gonna let you get away with it. That's the whole point. So when people start showing who they are to you, then you have to be able to see it for what it is and not go to the emotion where you get that attachment. Because you've been at him for so long and you got some love for him that you don't really want to see it, but it's in your face. So what else can you do? So that's important. Just test it, because they already are showing you who they are. You just have to be able to follow along with that. And if they're trustworthy, then roll with that. But if they show signs that they're inconsistent and they're kind of funny acting, and I'm talking about just lecturers, then that's when I kind of I take what I can from that person, but I don't champion them. I don't walk alongside with them because I don't know where that person will lead me. I still, of course, listen to whatever I hear from my father or whatever message I get back from him. But at the same time, other than that, I don't have anything. I don't listen to a lot of people like that. Now, Umar Johnson is very consistent in what he's doing. That's why I respect him, because he's consistent at what he's doing. Regardless of the situation, regardless of what people want to say about him, he's consistent. That's why, for me, that's why I mentioned Steve Coakley. I go back to Steve Coakley because he's one of the few lecturers that we had that was fearless. Most people who do lecturing today are very fearful of what whites will do to them. That's why their message is very much conditioned to the approval of white people. They know what to say, what not to say, what names to name, what names to not name. That's why I always, I keep saying Steve Coakley, because other than my father, he's one of the few, say Professor Griff, that was not scared to name the names.
Please select your
He's able to name the names of the people who are oppressing us, who are killing us in the street, and who are creating certain ways to help us, or creating certain ways that have been used to hurt us. You know, whether it be the Zionist movement, whether it be Boule. You have to do whatever you can to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to do whatever you can to just to
you
test
have your
the
extra care
That's
card,
right.
please scan it now.
Yeah, Dr. Crest Wilson has always been consistent with her point. Also,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she wanted to, but she made her
Please place
transition.
your bag in the bagging area. Then press the
Yeah.
button.
So I mean, even with Dr. Neely Fuller, he has stuff on YouTube too. He's very, that's why I say consistent. He's very consistent in what he says, because that shows a sign of a person that is really forthcoming with what they're. But if you keep switching your message up every time I turn around, I don't know where you're coming from anymore.
Please swipe your card.
I can't pinpoint anything on you. So let me go ahead and family and shut it down. I see it's getting kind of loud. Like I said, I wasn't able to do the mute like I usually do. Wasn't able to get to it, but I just wanted to do a conference call with y'all. My take on the Jesse Williams rant. And I want to say Tower Hat for everybody to get on and Hotep Watch Show.
Hotep Watch Show.
Please remove the unscanned items. Remember to always remember to take your receipt. Thank you for shopping at CVS.
I put my...
If you have your